Uh, Hi everybody. I found an interesting article in the MBA journal, Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, whose philosophy made the most sense for America in the 1960s. This article is part of a history study program, the DBQ project used in American history classes. On March 26, 1964, Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X met for the first time and only time. The occasion was a Senate debate on the passage of the landmark Civil Rights Bill. They met in the halls of the United States Capitol building and spoke for only a few minutes. Eyewitnesses reports, as well as photographs of the meeting, suggest a respect and warmth between the two leaders. Just 2 weeks before this meeting, Malcolm X had shocked America by announcing his break with Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam. Now free of black Muslims, banned on political activity, Malcolm planned to enter the fight for civil rights in America. The nation wondered, would King and Malcolm X be able to put aside their philosophical and religious differences to fight for equality and the end of racism? We'll never know. Malcolm was killed 11 months after his meeting with Dr. King. And just 2 days before they were to have met for a more formal discussion, he was 39 years old when he died. King was also 39 when he was assassinated 3 years later. Many Americans think of King and Malcolm X as perfect opposites. According to this view, one leader was a minister who believed in love and nonviolent action as forces of political and social change. The other was a man of the streets who advocated changing America by any means necessary. But is this view really accurate? Before examining the King and Malcolm X documents, read the short biographies that follow. Malcolm X, biographical information. Malcolm X's early life was one of extreme hardship and poverty. Born on May 19, 1925, he grew up in Lansing, Michigan with the name Malcolm Little. His father, J. Early Little, was a preacher and a follower of Marcus Garvey, one of the earliest and most influential black nationalist thinkers. His father died a violent death, perhaps because of his political beliefs. His mother, Louise, was left to support 8 children during the worst years of Depression. Our family was so poor, Malcolm recalled, that we would eat the whole out of a donut. The strain of raising 8 children led Louise Little to a mental breakdown. Malcolm was separated from his siblings and sent to a series of foster and detention homes. Although Malcolm was treated decently by his white foster care parents, the Swerlins, and excelled in an all-white school, he was elected president of his 11th grade class. He was never comfortable. At the age of 15, he dropped out of school and moved to Boston, Massachusetts, to live with his half-sister. For the next 6 years, Malcolm experienced the excitement and dangers of the street. He moved to Harlem, where he ran numbers, sold drugs, and was finally caught and sentenced to 8 to 10 years in prison for armed robbery. While in prison, Malcolm encountered the teachings of Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam. The religion appealed to the young, angry Malcolm. Day and night, Malcolm read and expanded his mind. He copied a dictionary from cover to cover and disciplined his thinking through hours of intense debate with other prisoners. Paroled from prison in 1952, he was a changed man, both mentally and spiritually. From 1952 until 1963, Malcolm X was a devout follower of Elijah Muhammad. Malcolm's last name was changed to X to symbolize the African name that he could never know. To follow Mr. Muhammad meant submission to his spiritual ideas and his brand of black nationalism. The Nation of Islam demanded complete abstinence from drugs and alcohol, a limitation on foods such as pork, strict rules of prayer, a disciplined lifestyle at home, and respect for one's brothers and sisters. All of these things appealed to Malcolm as he compared them to the chaos and violence of his early life. Followers of Elijah Muhammad were also taught that white race had brainwashed blacks to be patient while enduring injustice on this earth. Malcolm adopted and preached his anti-white rhetoric, and because of this, he was considered racist by many people. In the last years of his life, Malcolm began to change. 2 weeks before he died, Malcolm said, "I am not a racist in any way, shape, or form." Malcolm's shift on racial issues came in part because of his trip to Africa, the Muslim holy city of Mecca. Here he saw individuals of all colors and languages praying together to the same God, Allah. By late 1963, Malcolm X had broken his ties with the Nation of Islam. For the next year and a half, Malcolm X set out to create his own organization dedicated to achieving a better life for blacks in America, as well as for all people of African descent. His organization of Afro-American Unity, OAAU, became a powerful political force in a short period of time. Now let's examine Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King, biographical information. Martin Luther King Jr. was born January 15, 1929 in Atlanta, Georgia, in hot Atlanta. His father, Martin Luther King Sr., was one of the most important ministers in the South and was himself the son of a preacher. Although young Martin's family was by no means rich, it was clearly middle class. The King family had many positive role models and was full of Christian love. At the age of 6, Martin was told by a white family that he could not play with their son because of his skin color. This hurt the boy, who had never been aware of racism. When he went home and tearfully explained what had happened to his parents sat him down and told him about the facts of racism in American life. But they also told young Martin, "Don't let it make you feel that you are not as good as white people. You are as good as anyone else, and don't you ever forget it." Martin's parents also taught him that it was his Christian duty not to hate the white man. Martin took his teaching to heart. In his loving and strict household, the young king's enormous talents were allowed to mature. He excelled in school, and at age 15, passed the entrance exam in Morehouse University and enrolled in college. He next attended Crozer Seminary and eventually received his PhD in theology from Boston University. It was at Crozer that the king was introduced to the life and teachings of Mahatma Gandhi. Gandhi had led a massive nonviolent movement that freed India of British colonial rule. King was greatly impressed by Gandhi's nonviolence and appeal for love. King did not leave school expecting to change the world. He was interested in becoming a local pastor. However, in December of 1955, at the age of 26, King was thrust into the national spotlight. The week following Rosa Parks' decision to remain seated in the front of the Montgomery bus, King was chosen to lead a boycott that would send shockwaves throughout America. His strong leadership and clear description of the value of nonviolent protest helped keep the Montgomery boycotters from dividing. Within a year, Montgomery buses were desegregated. I always said desegregated. 2 years later, King and other ministers formed the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC. In early 1963, SCLC struck a blow at segregation in Birmingham, Alabama. Here, King wrote his famous letter from a Birmingham jail detailing the civil rights movement could no longer wait. Next, King and his helpers staged a march on Washington in 1963. Over 250,000 people attended that rally, at which King delivered his famous "I Have a Dream" speech. This march convinced President Kennedy and his successor, Lyndon Johnson, that they had enough support in the country to push hard for a new set of laws ending segregation in the South. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965 soon followed. These actions by Congress ended the Jim Crow laws and promised federal government support in enforcing the new laws. For the role he played in bringing about these historic changes, King was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. For the rest of his life, he fought for voting rights, economic opportunity, fair housing, and racial justice throughout the country. On April 4, 1968, Martin Luther King Jr. was gunned down by an assassin on a motel balcony in Memphis, Tennessee. In 13 short years, he had touched millions of lives and influenced an entire generation of people and leaders. Consider the ideas of these two men: a Muslim who leaned towards racial separation, the other a Christian who was firmly integrationist. Remember that King and Malcolm X privately admired each other's style and courage. While they rarely praised each other in public, they were not enemies. Today, the question remains: how should America have confronted the inequalities of the 1960s? From Martin Luther King, I Have a Dream speech, August 28, 1963. I Still Have a Dream is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day in the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, go to jail together, to climb up for freedom together. knowing that we will one day be free. Source: Autobiography of Malcolm X, 1965. I tell sincere white people, work in conjunction with us, each of us working among our own kind. Let sincere white individuals find all other white people who feel as the other white people who feel as they do, and let them form their own all white groups to work trying to convert other white people who are thinking and acting so racist. Let sincere whites go and teach nonviolence to other white people. We will completely respect our white coworkers. They will deserve credit. We will give them every credit. We will, meanwhile, be working among our own kind in our own Black communities, showing and teaching Black men in ways that only other Black men can. The Black man has got to help himself. Working separately, the sincere white people and sincere Black people actually will be working together. From Martin Luther King Jr., Our God is Marching On speech made on Alabama State Capitol steps at the end of the Selma to Montgomery March, March 21st, 1965. We are on the move. The burning of our churches will not deter us. We are on the move now. The bombing of our homes will not dissuade us. We are on the move now. Let us march on segregated schools until every vestige of segregation and inferior education becomes a thing of the past, and Negroes and whites study side by side in the socially healing context of the classroom. Basic Unity Program Organization of Afro-American Unity, founded by Malcolm X in 1964. The Organization of Afro-American Unity will devise original educational methods and procedures which will liberate the minds of our children from the vicious lies and distortions that are fed to us from the cradle to keep us mentally enslaved. We encourage Afro-Americans themselves to establish experimental institutes and educational workshops, liberation schools, and child care centers in Afro-American communities. Is there any more? Excuse me for being so non-professional, but this is so good to me. Well, that was the end. So, let me take a quick, brief moment to show you. Martin and Malcolm working together. MBA Journal, Midwest Business Alliance Journal. I dig this paper because this is one where we can really tell our truths and not be inhibited by other people paying for it. Like the owner refuses to get grants or set asides for Black people because he wants to remain free to talk as he would like. And I think that it's a great paper. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.